The Great Sphinx has stared across the desert for thousands of years. We think we know it, but what if the greatest secrets of history are not lost at all, but are right in front of us, hidden in plain sight? This journey explores 30 historical mysteries that have been overlooked, concealed, or simply misunderstood within the world's most familiar sites. By the end, you will see the map of human history not as a finished story, but as a living puzzle waiting to be solved. We will investigate a botanical code in an unreadable book and question whether an ancient map shows a continent it should not know. What do you believe is still waiting to be discovered? Beneath the paws of that colossal guardian lies a mystery that has tantalized explorers for centuries. The legend speaks of a hall of records, a vast hidden library said to contain the lost knowledge of a sophisticated ancient civilization, perhaps even Atlantis itself. This is not a modern fantasy. The idea was popularized by the famed psychic Edgar case in the 1930s, but its roots whisper through much older traditions. The concept is powerful. It suggests the Sphinx is not merely a statue, but a sentinel standing watch over a trove of wisdom deliberately buried for a future age to discover. For decades, this remained in the realm of pure speculation, a compelling story with no physical evidence that changed with the arrival of new technology. In the 1990s, a team of researchers conducted a seismic survey around the monument. By sending sound waves into the ground and measuring their reflections, they created a sonic map of what lay below. The results were startling. The data indicated several large, rectangular anomalies beneath the Sphinx, particularly in front of its paws and along its northern flank. These were not natural features like cracks or cavities. They appeared to be man-made voids, chambers carved with right angles. Later studies using ground-penetrating radar seemed to corroborate these findings, revealing what looked like a tunnel leading downward from near the Sphinx's rear haunch. The scientific community was and remains deeply divided. Critics argue the data is ambiguous, that the anomalies could be natural limestone formations or even pockets of moisture. But the proponents point to the precise shapes. Nature rarely creates perfect 90-degree corners. The real intrigue, however, lies not just in the potential discovery, but in the silence that has followed it. Why has there been no major excavation to simply dig and find out? The challenges are immense and layered. First, there is the monumental task of preserving the Sphinx itself. Any excavation around its fragile, weathered base risks causing catastrophic structural damage. The monument is already under constant conservation. Second, and more complex, are the political and archaeological hurdles. Egyptology is a careful, methodical science, and the idea of a hall of records challenges some established historical narratives. Permission for such an invasive investigation is rarely granted. There is also a legitimate fear of the unknown. What if drilling into a potential chamber allows modern air to rush in, instantly destroying fragile papyrus or artifacts that have survived for millennia in a sealed, stable environment? The Sphinx holds its secret tightly, guarded by a perfect storm of logistical danger, academic caution, and bureaucratic inertia. So the chamber, if it exists, remains a ghost in the machine, a shadow on a radar screen. It is a secret hidden not in a remote jungle, but in one of the most photographed and studied places on Earth, waiting just out of reach beneath the sand. While the Sphinx guards its secrets in stone, another enigma is preserved on fragile parchment, a book that has defied every attempt to read it. This is the Voynich manuscript, often called the world's most unreadable text. Discovered in a European monastery in 1912 by a book dealer named Wilfred Voynich, it is a small, dense volume of about 240 pages, filled from edge to edge with bizarre, looping script and accompanied by equally strange illustrations. The text, written in an alphabet completely unknown to modern linguistics, flows in a confident, practiced hand, suggesting it is a real language and not a random forgery. But for over a century, the finest codebreakers, including teams from both world wars who cracked military ciphers, have stared at its pages and seen only gibberish. The true mystery, however, might not be in the words alone, but in the pictures they accompany. Entire sections of the book are devoted to breathtakingly detailed paintings of plants. These are not stylized medieval herbs. They are vibrant, biological-looking specimens with intricate root systems, veined leaves, and peculiar seed pods. Yet not a single one corresponds to any known species on Earth. They are botanical impossibilities, flora from a dream. This has led many researchers to believe the manuscript is not a hoax, but a coded herbal or pharmacopoeia. The theory is compelling. In an age where knowledge of healing plants was valuable, even proprietary, a skilled herbalist or alchemist might have created a secret language to record their recipes, protecting their trade. Modern analyses using statistical methods have shown the text has patterns consistent with a natural language. It follows Zipf's law, a linguistic principle where the most common words in any human language appear with predictable frequency. The Voynich text does this, implying structure and meaning. Recent attempts using artificial intelligence have proposed possible links to Hebrew or other Near Eastern languages, suggesting it could be a lost dialect encoded with a complex cipher. But these theories remain unproven, and the plants are the ultimate lock on the mystery. Are they fantastical inventions meant to symbolize alchemical concepts, or are they meticulous records of real, now extinct species drawn from a land unknown to European science? Each lush, impossible leaf and twisting stem is a question without an answer, a secret garden of knowledge locked behind a linguistic wall we cannot yet climb. The book sits in a Yale University library, a silent testament to the fact that some of history's greatest secrets are not buried, but displayed openly, waiting for the one key that will make sense of the beautiful, bewildering code. Those botanical impossibilities in the Voynich manuscript ask us to look closer at the familiar. This same principle applies to one of the most spectacular sights on Earth, yet it is a sight utterly invisible to the people who created it. Scattered across the arid plains of southern Peru, the Nazca lines are a gallery of giants. Etched into the dark desert pavement by removing the top layer of stones to reveal the lighter earth beneath, these geoglyphs depict sprawling geometric shapes, trapezoids and spirals, as well as enormous figures of animals, a hummingbird with a wingspan longer than a jumbo jet, a spider, a monkey, a whale. Their sheer scale is the first mystery. The largest figures stretch over 200 meters, and the full network of lines covers nearly 500 square kilometers. You cannot see them from the ground. Standing at the edge of a line, it appears only as a shallow groove in the gravel. Their true form is only revealed from the air, a perspective the Nazca people, who created them between 500 BCE and 500 CE, could never have physically achieved. This fact has fueled endless speculation about ancient astronauts or lost technologies, but the truth emerging from decades of archaeological boots on the ground is far more fascinating. Researchers like Maria Reich, who dedicated her life to studying the lines, noticed something profound. Many of the long, straight lines and trapezoids align precisely with the position of the sun on the horizon during the winter and summer solstices. Others point directly to the rising or setting points of important stars and constellations during key times of the year. The giant spider glyph, for instance, is believed to be a representation of the constellation Orion, a grouping of stars deeply important to many ancient cultures for marking seasonal change. This suggests the Nazca lines were not random art, but a colossal astronomical calendar etched into the landscape. Think of it as a sacred map, where walking a specific line during a specific celestial event became a ritual act connecting the people to the cycles of the cosmos. But why go to such monumental effort? The answer likely lies beneath the dry surface. The Nazca region is one of the driest places on Earth, survival depended on a profound understanding of water, its underground sources, and the seasonal shifts that might bring precious moisture. The alignments to solstices and stars were not just about marking time for agriculture, they were about predicting the arrival of water. Some researchers proposed the lines acted as ritual pathways, guiding people in ceremonies to summon life-giving rains or to honor deities associated with mountains where the precious water originated as snowmelt. The animal figures themselves may be linked to water symbols. The hummingbird, a creature that drinks nectar, or the whale, a being of the ocean, could all be part of a complex system of water worship and celestial observation. Modern technology is now allowing us to see this system with new eyes. Aerial drone footage captures the staggering scale in stunning detail, while computer animations can overlay the lines with celestial maps from 2,000 years ago, showing the precise alignments light up as the virtual sun or stars slide into position. This transforms the desert from a canvas of mysterious pictures into a dynamic, functional landscape, a testament to a civilization that read the sky like a book and wrote their prayers into the very earth, creating secrets so vast they could only be seen by the gods or by us centuries later, finally looking down from the heavens they sought to understand. The Nazca people wrote their secrets across the desert sky, but another ancient culture chose a far more durable material to encode a mystery of unimaginable wealth. Among the famous Dead Sea Scrolls, a collection of ancient Jewish texts discovered in caves near Qumran, one stands utterly apart. While the others are written on fragile parchment or papyrus and contain biblical passages and community rules, this one is inscribed on thin sheets of copper. This is the Copper Scroll, and it is not a religious text. It is a treasure map, dated to the 1st century, around the time of the Roman destruction of the Second Temple in Jerusalem. The scroll lists 64 locations where staggering quantities of gold, silver, precious vessels, and priestly vestments were supposedly hidden. The amounts are not symbolic, they are shockingly specific. One entry describes a site containing 900 talents of gold. Given the weight of a talent, that single cache would represent a fortune worth hundreds of millions of dollars today. The total described across all sites is almost beyond comprehension, a hoard that would rewrite the economic history of the ancient world. From the moment it was deciphered in the 1950s, scholars have been locked in a fierce debate. Is this a literal inventory of the temple treasury, hidden away from the advancing Roman legions, or is it a work of legend, a symbolic or fictional list? The very medium argues for its seriousness. Copper was expensive and difficult to work with. You would not go to such trouble for a fantasy. The language, too, is stark and direct, reading like a straightforward set of instructions. Yet the directions themselves are maddeningly vague to a modern reader. They reference landmarks that have been lost to time, naming canals, dams, and tombs that no longer exist or cannot be identified. Take location number 8, which states in the conduit which is in the court of the peristyle, in its outlet at the mouth of the spout, 6 bars of silver. We have no idea where that court or its conduit was. This has led some to believe the Romans found and looted the treasure, or that it was quietly recovered long ago. But the dream persists, fueled by a few tantalizing clues. One entry mentions a hiding place under the stairs of the salt pit. In the 1960s, an archaeologist investigating a cave near Qumran that was filled with ancient salt deposits found steps carved into the rock. Excavation revealed nothing, but the correlation was eerie. Modern treasure hunters, armed with metal detectors and ground-penetrating radar, have used the scroll as a literal guide, scouring the arid landscape of the West Bank and Jordan for generations. Their searches have turned up ancient artifacts, but never the legendary hoard described on those green, corroded sheets. The Copper Scroll, now housed in a museum in Amman, Jordan, presents a paradox. It is perhaps the most openly detailed treasure map in history, its contents fully published for the world to see. yet its secrets remain locked away, not by code or cipher, but by the slow erasure of time over the very landmarks it names. It is a reminder that sometimes the clearest directions can lead to the most elusive destinations, leaving us to wonder if a fortune still sleeps beneath the dust, waiting for someone to finally understand the ancient directions left in plain, metallic sight. From a treasure map of copper, we move to a machine of bronze, a device so advanced it seems to have fallen out of time itself. In 1901, sponge divers off the coast of the Greek island of Antikythera stumbled upon the wreck of a Roman cargo ship. Among the statues and pottery, they recovered a lump of corroded bronze and wood about the size of a shoebox. For decades, it sat in a museum drawer, a curious artifact deemed unremarkable. Then, in the 1950s, a scientist named Derek de Solla Price began to X-ray the lump. What he saw inside would shatter our understanding of ancient technology. The X-rays revealed a complex clockwork of at least 30 interlocking bronze gears, precisely cut with triangular teeth. This was the Antikythera mechanism, a 2,000-year-old analog computer. For years, its accepted purpose was that of an astronomical calculator. By turning a hand crank on the side, the user could move dials on the front and back faces to predict the positions of the sun, moon, and known planets, even forecasting eclipses with astonishing accuracy. It modeled the irregular motions of the moon so perfectly that it accounted for what we now call lunar anomaly, a subtle wobble in its orbit. This alone was a feat of engineering not seen again for over 1,000 years. But the latest research, using advanced three-dimensional scanning and surface imaging, has decoded more inscriptions and revealed even grander ambitions for this device. It was not just a scientific instrument, it was a cultural and philosophical nexus. One of its dials was dedicated to tracking the 4-year cycle of the Panhellenic Games, including the Olympic Games. This was not a trivial addition. It connected the celestial clockwork above to the sacred rhythm of human competition below, suggesting the Greeks saw athletic festivals as events timed by the cosmos itself. More intriguingly, the mechanism also seems to have had an astrological function. The newly read text on its plates includes references to the colors of eclipses, which were considered potent omens. Another part of the device may have calculated the rising and setting of specific stars, information used in casting horoscopes. This blends the line between science and belief, showing that for its creators, predicting a planetary position and interpreting its meaning for human affairs were two sides of the same bronze coin. At its heart, the Antikythera mechanism was likely a teaching tool, a physical demonstration of the Greek philosophical ideal of cosmic order. By turning the crank and watching the gears turn the dials, a student could see the elegant, mechanical logic behind the seemingly chaotic dance of the heavens. It made the abstract principles of philosophers like Aristotle tangible. Modern three-dimensional animations bring this genius to life, showing how a single input rotation splits into multiple outputs, driving tiny pointers that sweep across inscribed scales for the zodiac, the Egyptian calendar, and planetary phases. Watching these digital reconstructions, you see a miniature universe in motion, engineered with a precision that humbles the modern mind. This was not a secret hidden away, but a masterpiece lost to the deep. Its very existence, lying on the seabed for 2 millennia, whispers a tantalizing question. If this level of sophisticated mechanical knowledge was common enough to be shipped as cargo, what other wonders from the ancient world have been lost forever, leaving only this one miraculous survivor to hint at the true height of their understanding? The gears of the Antikythera mechanism calculated a known world, but half a world away, another artifact seemed to chart lands that should have been impossible to know. In 1929, during the renovation of the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul, a forgotten map was discovered, drawn on gazelle skin in 1513 by the Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis. It was a stunning work of art and geography. The surviving fragment shows the Atlantic Ocean with the western coasts of Africa and Europe and the eastern shores of South America with remarkable accuracy. But it is the southern edge of that continent that ignites the firestorm of controversy. Below Brazil, the map depicts a landmass extending eastward with bays, rivers, and mountains. Some researchers, most notably Professor Charles Hapgood in the 1960s, made an extraordinary claim. They argued this southern land was not South America at all, but the coastline of Antarctica, and more shockingly, Antarctica as it would appear without its ice cap. The theory suggests the mapmaker had access to ancient source maps drawn by a seafaring civilization that explored the continent thousands of years before it was officially discovered in 1820, when it was already buried under miles of ice. This is a captivating idea, a secret history of polar exploration lost to time. However, the vast majority of historians and geographers dismiss this interpretation. The scientific consensus is firm. Antarctica has been covered in a thick ice sheet for at least 15 million years. No human civilization could have mapped its ice-free coastline. So what are we actually looking at? The map itself provides the clues. In his extensive notes, Piri Reis was remarkably transparent about his sources. He wrote that he compiled the map from 20 different source charts, including several he described as dating from the time of Alexander the Great, Portuguese maps of newly discovered lands, and most intriguingly, a map drawn by Christopher Columbus himself. This admission is the map's true secret. It is not a single snapshot of the world, but a layered collage of knowledge, a fusion of Arab, European, and potentially even older cartographic traditions that were lost when the originals crumbled to dust. The accuracy of the longitudes for South America is particularly telling. In 1513, determining longitude at sea was the single greatest technical challenge for navigators. It would not be reliably solved for another 250 years. Yet, the Piri Reis map places the Brazilian coast with a precision that European maps would not achieve for decades. This suggests his Arab or possibly pre-Columbian sources possessed advanced navigational techniques that were later forgotten or suppressed. The so-called Antarctica coastline is far more likely a speculative addition, a cartographer's best guess at what might lie beyond the known world, perhaps conflating the southern continent with the rumored Great Southern Land that appeared on many maps of the era. Modern technology allows us to test these claims visually. Side-by-side comparisons with satellite imagery reveal the uncanny fit of the South American coast, the bends of rivers and capes aligning in a way that feels almost modern. Then, when the controversial southern land is superimposed over Antarctica, the fit is poor and forced, a lesson in how we can see patterns we desperately want to see. The Piri Reis map is not a relic of Ice Age explorers, but something equally profound. It is a surviving mosaic of a lost global knowledge network, a secret not of a single place, but of a forgotten conversation between cultures, each contributing a piece to the puzzle of the world, all compiled by one admiral who had the wisdom to write his sources down. That map was a fusion of lost knowledge, but in Egypt, another carving has been misinterpreted as a relic of impossible technology. Within the dark crypts of the Dendera temple complex, a stone relief shows a scene that has electrified alternative history enthusiasts for decades. It appears to show a large, bulbous object like a modern light bulb with a snaking filament inside, supported by a pillar and held by a priest figure. To a contemporary eye, it looks unmistakably like an electrical device. This is the so-called Dendera light bulb, a cornerstone of theories suggesting ancient Egyptians possessed advanced electricity. The real secret, however, is not a hidden power grid, but a profound lesson in how our modern perspective can completely distort ancient intent. The orthodox Egyptological explanation, based on decades of translating hieroglyphs and comparing thousands of similar motifs, reveals a rich mythological scene, not an engineering diagram. The bulb is not a bulb at all. It represents a cosmic womb, a bubble of primordial waters. The snake inside is not a filament but the god Hormakit, a manifestation of the sun god at dawn, being born from a lotus flower, which itself is sprouting from the jed pillar you see at the center. The jed is a powerful symbol of stability and the backbone of the god Osiris. The entire tableau is a creation myth, depicting the moment the sun is reborn each morning from the watery chaos, supported by the stability of the cosmos. The priest figure is not an electrician but a deity holding this sacred moment aloft. This interpretation is not a guess. It is confirmed by surrounding hieroglyphs and by comparing this relief to countless others in Egyptian art that show similar scenes of gods emerging from lotuses within protective enclosures. The visual language is consistent. To see a light bulb here is to ignore the entire symbolic vocabulary of the culture that created it. We are looking at a spiritual concept through a lens of 20th century technology, and our brain fills in the blanks with what it knows best. This is the true hidden in plain sight phenomenon. The carving is not hiding a secret about ancient electricity. It is openly displaying a secret about ancient belief. Our failure to see it is the secret we impose upon it. Modern visual comparisons make this clear. Side-by-side images show the Dendera relief next to undeniably mythological scenes from other temples, where gods in boats are depicted inside similar bulb-like shapes representing the sun's journey through the underworld. The pattern is obvious once you know what to look for. The lesson of Dendera is a cautionary one for any historical detective. It reminds us that the past is a foreign country, and the most seductive mysteries are sometimes just a case of mistranslation, where we see our own reflection in the ancient stone instead of the story it was meant to tell. The Dendera carving shows us how easily we can misread symbolism as technology, but in a museum basement in Baghdad lies an object that resists any purely symbolic explanation. It is a simple, unassuming clay jar, roughly the size of a man's fist, dated to the Parthian period around 2,000 years ago. Inside, archaeologists found a copper cylinder, sealed at the bottom with asphalt, and within that cylinder an iron rod. When the jar is filled with an acidic electrolyte like vinegar or grape juice, something remarkable happens. The iron and copper, immersed in the acidic solution, create a chemical reaction. This is a basic galvanic cell. In the 1930s, a German archaeologist named Wilhelm Koenig, who first studied the find, replicated it and confirmed it could produce a small but measurable electric current around 1 to 2 volts. This is the so-called Baghdad battery, and its potential purpose is one of archaeology's most electrifying debates. If it was a battery, what was it used for? One compelling theory points to electroplating. Artisans of the period were masters of gilding, applying thin layers of gold onto silver or other metals. The standard method used mercury, a toxic and dangerous process. Could a bank of these simple cells, connected in series to increase the voltage, have provided a gentle current for electroplating? It is technically possible. A small voltage could be used to deposit gold from a solution onto a statue or artifact, creating a bond that was both beautiful and durable. Experiments by modern enthusiasts have shown that replicas can indeed plate small objects with a thin layer of gold or silver, proving the concept works in practice. Another theory ventures into the realm of ancient medicine. Texts from the Greek and Roman world describe the use of electric fish like the torpedo ray to numb pain. Physicians would have patients stand on the fish to cure ailments like gout or headaches. Could the Baghdad battery have been a more controllable version of this? A 1 or 2 volt shock applied to the temples or a sore muscle might have produced a tingling, numbing sensation that ancient healers interpreted as therapeutic. It would have been a mysterious and powerful tool, its effect seeming magical to those who did not understand the chemistry at work. Yet, many mainstream archaeologists offer a far more mundane explanation. They argue the jar was simply a storage container for sacred scrolls. The iron rod was a corroded piece of parchment roller, and the copper cylinder was just a protective case. The asphalt seal was to keep out moisture. They point out that no wires or connectors were found with any of the dozen or so similar jars discovered. If it was part of an electrical system, where is the rest of the circuit? The secret here may not be in proving its definitive use, but in the tantalizing possibility it represents. Even if only one of these jars was ever intentionally used to generate a current, it reveals a breathtaking insight. It means that nearly 2 millennia before Volta's famous battery in 1800, a culture in the Middle East had stumbled upon the fundamental principle of electrochemistry. They may not have understood the science as we do, but they observed and harnessed a natural phenomenon. A modern recreation video makes this tangible. Watching a replica jar filled with lemon juice slowly power a small light-emitting diode or cause a faint bubble of hydrogen to form on the iron rod is a quiet, profound moment. It connects our world of technology directly to a forgotten experiment on a dusty workshop floor 2,000 years ago. The object itself holds its silence, a simple clay pot that could have been a holy relic, a pharmacist's tool, or the world's first battery. Its true purpose now the current that powers our curiosity. A forgotten tool can become a fossil faster than you might think. In 1936, near the town of London, Texas, a couple walking along a creek bed made a bizarre discovery. Protruding from a broken chunk of limestone was the head of a hammer. This was not simply lying on the ground, it was fully encased as if the rock had formed around it. The geological layer it came from was dated to the Cretaceous period, over 100 million years old. The implications were staggering, a modern-looking tool sealed inside ancient stone. This is the London hammer, and for decades it has been a favorite piece of evidence for those who believe in ancient advanced civilizations or human origins far older than science accepts. The hammer itself looks unremarkable, with a wooden handle and a simple iron head, but its setting is the true mystery. How could a clearly man-made object end up inside rock that predates humanity by tens of millions of years? The secret lies not in the story, but in the science of the materials themselves. When researchers finally subjected the hammer to detailed analysis, the story began to unravel in fascinating ways. First, the hammer head. Metallurgical tests revealed it is not ordinary modern steel. It is made of an unusual, high-purity iron with only trace amounts of other metals, an alloy that is quite rare in contemporary mass-produced tools. This suggests it could be a type of 19th-century ironwork, possibly from a local blacksmith, not a factory-made item. Then there is the rock, the concretion process, where minerals precipitate from water and cement sediment around an object, is not always a slow, million-year-long event. Under the right chemical conditions, particularly in mineral-rich water, a concretion can form remarkably quickly, encapsulating an object in decades or even years. A modern hammer dropped into a creek with the right mineral content could have become the nucleus for such a concretion, with layers of limestone building up around it relatively fast. The surrounding rock matrix, while old, was fractured. The most logical explanation is that the hammer fell or was left in a crevice within the ancient limestone, and the concretion formed in that pocket, creating the illusion that the hammer and the Cretaceous stone were one and the same age. Microscope images tell the final part of the tale. Close-up views of the metal show a crystalline structure and corrosion patterns consistent with 19th-century iron, not some lost ancient metallurgy. Images of the concretion boundary show how the mineral layers envelop the handle, a clear snapshot of a rapid, localized process, not a slow geological embrace. The London hammer is not proof of time travelers or prehistoric toolmakers. It is a testament to a different kind of magic, the surprising speed of geology, and the human eagerness to see the extraordinary in the ordinary. It remains a secret hidden in plain sight, not because it reveals an ancient mystery, but because it shows how easily a simple object, given the right setting and a dash of time, can become a riddle that challenges everything we think we know. The hammer in Texas was a lesson in deceptive context, but in the Andes, stonework exists that needs no such explanation. Rising above the city of Cusco in Peru, the fortress of Sacsayhuaman presents a spectacle of raw, impossible power. Its walls are built from colossal limestone blocks, some weighing over 300 tons, as heavy as a small blue whale. They are stacked in 3 zigzagging tiers, forming a defensive barrier that left Spanish conquistadors in awe. But it is not the size that truly stuns, it is the fit. Each megalith is a unique, irregular polygon, yet they lock together with a precision that seems to defy physics. The joints between stones are so tight you cannot slide a piece of paper between them, a seamless puzzle carved on a gargantuan scale. Some surfaces even have a strange, glassy sheen, as if the stone was briefly melted and then solidified. This odd texture has fueled theories of ancient lasers or forgotten technologies that could soften rock. The real secret, however, is not a lost tool, but a triumph of human ingenuity, patience, and communal effort on a scale that still astounds us. The Inca, who built this fortress in the 15th century, were master stonemasons, and their methods, while labor-intensive, were brilliantly effective. They worked the stone using harder stones as hammers. Teams of workers would pound away at a granite or limestone block for months, gradually shaping its face. For the final, hairline fit, they used abrasives like sand and water, grinding the surfaces against each other in a process of trial and error. You can imagine the scene, a massive block suspended by ropes and levers, being lowered onto its neighbor, then lifted again as workers sanded down a high spot over and over until it settled into a perfect interlocking embrace. The slight convexity of each block's face, creating that distinctive bulging joint, was intentional. It made the walls incredibly resistant to earthquakes, allowing them to shift and settle without collapsing. As for the vitrified, melted look on some stones, the likely explanation is far more organic. Over centuries, mineral-rich water seeping from the ground and rain washing over the surfaces can deposit layers of calcite and other compounds. This natural patina, polished by wind and weather, can create that smooth, almost glazed appearance, a gift of time rather than technology. Visualizing the construction is key to understanding the achievement. Picture a mountainside transformed into a vast workshop. Ramps of earth and rubble, built and rebuilt, allowed teams of hundreds to move these titans with ropes and rollers. Levers and fulcrums, simple machines known since antiquity, provided the fine control for positioning. It was a symphony of coordinated labor, a society marshalling its entire strength into stone. Modern reconstructions and animations bring this Herculean effort to life, showing the incremental process, the dust, the strain, the final moment when a block drops into its destined place with a solid, satisfying thud that would echo for centuries. Sacsayhuaman's secret is not hidden in a code or a chamber. It is displayed openly in every impossible seam. It is the secret of what a civilization can achieve when knowledge, tradition, and the collective will of thousands are focused on a single, monumental task, leaving behind a fortress that is less a building and more a permanent statement carved into the bones of the earth. That same principle of a story told in stone finds a parallel in thread, woven into a narrative meant to celebrate a conqueror. The Bayeux Tapestry is a 70-meter-long embroidered chronicle, commissioned by the Normans to glorify William the Conqueror's invasion of England in 1066. Its central panels are a clear, triumphant propaganda piece, showing Harold's broken oath and the decisive Battle of Hastings, but to focus only on the main story is to miss the true intrigue. Look closer into the borders that frame the entire epic. There, in a series of small, often overlooked scenes, a completely different story seems to be whispering. Woven among the geometric patterns are vivid depictions of Aesop's fables. We see the fox and the crow, where the flattering fox tricks the crow into dropping its cheese. We see the wolf and the crane, where the crane removes a bone from the wolf's throat only to be rewarded with ingratitude. These are not random decorations. In a medieval context, these fables were well-known morality tales about deceit, broken promises, and the folly of trusting the powerful, placed strategically alongside scenes of Norman lords feasting and planning their invasion. The parallels are biting. Is the fox William using cunning and false diplomacy to gain a crown? Is the wolf the brutal reality of conquest where helpers are cast aside? Even more startling are the sporadic, unexplained nude figures that appear in the lower border. Men, exposed and sometimes contorted, appear below the main action. Some historians interpret these as symbols of shame and humiliation, perhaps representing the defeated Anglo-Saxons stripped of their dignity and land. Others see them as omens of the chaos and moral corruption that follows war. This creates a fascinating duality. The central tapestry shouts the official, victorious Norman history, while the borders murmur a subversive, critical commentary. Who wove this secret subplot? The leading theory points to the artisans themselves. The tapestry was almost certainly embroidered by Anglo-Saxon women renowned for their skill. These women, living under the new Norman rule, had no voice in the official records. The loom and the needle, however, gave them one. In the margins, the only space they might have controlled, they could stitch their grief, their resentment, and their sharp moral judgment of the events that had shattered their world. It is a profound act of hidden resistance. A close-up shot of these borders reveals the delicate, deliberate work. The fox's sly expression, the crow's foolish posture, the vulnerable nakedness of the figures. Each stitch carries a weight of silent testimony. The tapestry's secret is not locked away. It is displayed in plain sight along its entire length, a triumphant public monument that also serves as a clandestine critique, reminding us that history is rarely a single story, but often a tense dialogue between the victor's boast and the vanquished's whisper, forever woven into the same cloth. Silent testimony can be found carved into wood as well as woven into thread. On the most isolated inhabited island on Earth, Easter Island, a collection of wooden artifacts holds a mystery that speaks of a catastrophic silence. These are the Rongorongo tablets, about 24 surviving pieces of wood, mostly driftwood, covered from edge to edge in tiny, intricate glyphs. The symbols are beautiful and bizarre, a mix of stylized human figures, birds, fish, plants, and geometric shapes, all arranged in a precise, alternating pattern called reverse boustrophedon. This means the lines of text do not simply run left to right, but rather like an ox plowing a field. One line reads left to right, and the next line is flipped upside down and reads right to left. This sophisticated structure is the first clue that Rongorongo is not simple decoration. It suggests a highly formalized system, a true script. The tragedy is that today, no one alive can read a single word of it. The secret of Rongorongo is not just its undeciphered message, but the story of how an entire library of knowledge was erased in a single, brutal generation. The conventional history tells us that writing was invented independently only a handful of times in human history, in Mesopotamia, China, Mesoamerica, and possibly Egypt. Rongorongo presents the staggering possibility of a fifth, completely isolated invention. There is no evidence of contact between the Rapa Nui people and any other literate culture before European arrival. If it is writing, it emerged from a community of at most a few thousand people on a speck of land in the vast Pacific, a testament to the universal human urge to record and remember. But what does it record? Without a Rosetta Stone, we are left with theories. Some researchers believe it is not full writing, but a form of proto-writing, a sophisticated mnemonic device for priests. Each glyph might not represent a specific word or sound, but instead act as a prompt for reciting a lineage, a creation chant, or an astronomical calendar. The glyphs of birds and fish could be keys to memorizing vast oral histories about migration and resources. Others, however, point to modern computer analysis. Statistical studies of the glyph sequences show patterns consistent with true linguistic systems, not random symbolic lists. The distribution and repetition of signs follow rules hinting at grammar and syntax. This suggests the tablets may indeed contain narratives, laws, or sacred texts, a complete world view etched into wood. The reason we may never know for certain is a history of profound loss. In the 1860s, Peruvian slave raiders descended on Easter Island, capturing or killing nearly half the population, including, it is believed, the last of the learned men who could read the script. The social and cultural collapse that followed was absolute. When missionaries arrived soon after, they found the remaining tablets being used as firewood or fishing reels by people who no longer understood their significance. The few elders who recalled fragments were unable to provide a full translation. What remains today are these ghostly tablets in museums, their surfaces a forest of tiny carved figures pointing to a lost intellectual tradition. Visualizing this is heartbreaking. Imagine a single, weathered tablet, its glyphs worn but still sharp, each bird and spiral holding a story of voyages, kings, or star lore. Then pull back to see the island itself, the silent moai statues with their backs to the sea, standing guard over an empty archive. The Rongorongo script is a secret hidden in the most devastating way possible, not buried or encoded, but displayed openly in a language whose last speaker died without passing on the key. It is a permanent reminder that knowledge is fragile and that some doors, once closed by history's cruelty, may never fully open again. The silent glyphs of Rongorongo speak of an isolated world, but on a windswept New England coast, another stone structure tells a different tale of mistaken identity. In Newport, Rhode Island, stands a curious round tower of rough stone, its arches open to the sea air. For generations, its presence sparked one of America's favorite historical fantasies, that it was built by Vikings, a pre-Columbian outpost of Norsemen who sailed far south of their known settlements. This romantic idea, however, crumbles under the weight of the real secret hidden in its mortar and colonial paperwork. The tower was almost certainly not built by Leif Erikson, but by a 17th-century colonial governor named Benedict Arnold. This is not the infamous traitor of the Revolutionary War, but his great-grandfather, the first governor of the Rhode Island colony. Records from his estate, including his will dated 1677, explicitly mention my stone-built windmill. The architectural evidence is even more convincing. The tower's design is not a unique Viking artifact, but a common post-mill base from the period. In England, particularly in Arnold's native Somerset, numerous nearly identical round stone towers were built to support wooden windmill caps that could rotate to catch the wind. The Newport Tower's construction matches this perfectly, with an off-center central pillar that was designed to support the massive turning mechanism of the mill above. Even the arched windows are practical, allowing the long mill sails to sweep past the stone base without striking it. This was not a ceremonial space or a fortress, but a piece of agricultural infrastructure, a testament to the pragmatic needs of a new colony trying to establish a sustainable economy. The secret here is not a lost civilization, but a forgotten chapter of early American life. The tower's true story is woven into the mundane details of property deeds, wills, and the architectural pattern books settlers carried in their minds from the Old World. Modern comparisons make this undeniable. Side-by-side photographs of the Newport Tower and surviving 17th-century English windmill bases, like the Chesterton Mill in Warwickshire, show the same proportions, the same arched openings, and the same functional design. The Viking myth persists because it is a more thrilling narrative, a solitary relic of epic exploration. The truth of a governor's windmill speaks to a different kind of courage, the gritty work of building a community from the ground up, grain by ground grain. The tower stands not as a mystery of who came before Columbus, but as a monument to the colonists who came after, who looked at a wild coastline and saw not just a new world, but a place where a very old idea, a mill turning in the wind, could take root and help a settlement survive. The windmill in Newport was a case of mistaken identity, but some historical secrets are born from pure invention. In the late 1960s, a story began to circulate that captured the imagination of the ancient astronaut community and has never fully let go. It told of a Chinese archaeologist named Kai Pu-te who, in 1938, discovered a series of burial caves in the remote Bayan Ha Mountains. Inside, he allegedly found the remains of small, large-headed skeletons, and beside them, hundreds of stone discs, each with a hole in the center and a spiral groove etched with tiny, unknown hieroglyphs. These were the Dropa stones. The tale grew more elaborate with each retelling. Experts supposedly dated the discs to 12,000 years old, and the translated inscriptions told a harrowing story of a crashed spacecraft. The Dropa, a peaceful alien race, were stranded on Earth and unable to repair their vessel, and the local Ham tribe either revered or hunted them. It was a perfect storm of mystery, blending archaeology, extraterrestrials, and a lost chapter of human history. The secret, however, is that not a single piece of this story holds up to scrutiny. No reputable archaeological journal has ever recorded Kai Pu-te or his expedition. The supposed professor who translated the discs, a man named Tsum Nui, is a name that does not appear in any academic registry. The photographs that sometimes accompany the story are grainy, often contradictory, and traceable not to a Chinese dig site, but to speculative articles in European magazines. The entire narrative appears to be an elaborate hoax, likely originating in a German paranormal magazine called Das Vegetarische Universum in the early 1960s. It was then picked up and sensationalized by authors in the West, adding layers of detail with each retelling until it felt like documented fact. The persistence of the Dropa stones myth reveals a powerful truth about how we engage with the past. It speaks to a deep human desire for connection to something grander, for evidence that we are not alone and that our history is more spectacular than the standard timeline allows. These stories are compelling because they offer simple, thrilling answers to complex questions about human origins and ancient achievements. But the real damage of such tales is not that they are false, it is that they act as a distraction. They consume public attention and scholarly energy that could be directed toward genuine, unresolved archaeological puzzles. While people debate the authenticity of fictional stone discs, real mysteries like the purpose of the Antikythera mechanism or the meaning of the Rongorongo script receive less of the spotlight they deserve. The legacy of the Dropa stones is a cautionary one. In an age of digital misinformation, it reminds us to look for the provenance, to ask for the primary sources, and to be wary of stories that seem too perfectly tailored to our fantasies. The stones themselves may not exist, but the lesson they offer is carved in reality. The most seductive secrets are sometimes those we wish were true, and learning to tell the difference is the first step toward uncovering the real wonders hidden in plain sight. The desire for tangible proof of the miraculous can lead us to scrutinize a simple piece of linen for centuries. Housed in the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist in Turin, Italy, the shroud is a 14-foot-long cloth bearing the faint, haunting imprint of a crucified man. For millions of the faithful, it is the very burial shroud of Jesus Christ, a sacred relic imprinted by a burst of divine energy at the resurrection. For science, it is one of history's most contentious puzzles. The debate seemed settled definitively in 1988. In a highly publicized study, 3 independent laboratories in Oxford, Zurich, and Tucson were given small samples from a corner of the shroud. Using radiocarbon dating, a method that measures the decay of carbon-14 atoms in organic material, they each arrived at a strikingly similar conclusion. The flax used to weave the linen grew sometime between 1260 and 1390. This placed the shroud's origin firmly in the medieval period, around 700 years after the crucifixion. For many, the case was closed. It was an elaborate, if masterful, medieval forgery. But the secret of the shroud is not that simple date. The secret is the storm of scientific controversy that date unleashed, a debate that continues to this day and reveals how messy the intersection of faith and science can truly be. Critics of the carbon dating immediately pointed to potential flaws. The sample taken was from a corner edge, an area repeatedly handled over centuries, and crucially, a spot likely damaged in a devastating fire in 1532. That fire, which nearly destroyed the shroud, caused molten silver from its reliquary to drip onto the cloth. To extinguish the flames, monks doused it with water. Skeptics of the medieval date argue this event could have fundamentally altered the cloth's chemistry. The intense heat and the introduction of new carbon from the fire's smoke or the water could have contaminated the sample, making the linen appear centuries younger than it actually is. Another compelling theory suggests the sampled area was not part of the original 1st century cloth at all, but an expertly woven medieval repair, often called an invisible reweave, meant to reinforce the damaged edge after the fire. Textile experts have noted differences in the weave pattern at that exact location, lending credence to the idea that the scientists dated a patch, not the original artifact. Meanwhile, other branches of research seem to pull in the opposite direction. Botanists claim to have identified pollen grains embedded in the cloth that are native only to the region around Jerusalem, some from plants that became extinct after the 1st century. Forensic pathologists studying the image note the stains have chemical properties consistent with real human blood, and the anatomical details of the wounds, from the scourge marks to the positioning of the nails through the wrists, not the palms, are medically accurate in a way a medieval forger likely would not have known. The image itself remains a mystery. No one has been able to replicate exactly how a faint, three-dimensional, negative image of a human form could have been transferred onto linen using any known medieval technique. It is not a painting, as no pigments have been found. Some propose a natural chemical reaction from a body, perhaps accelerated by a rare event, created the stain. The shroud, therefore, sits at an impasse. One set of evidence, the carbon dates, declares it medieval. Another set, from botany, forensics, and material science, suggests a much older and more enigmatic origin. This ongoing clash is the real phenomenon hidden in plain sight. It is not a secret about the cloth's authenticity, but a secret about the limits of our tools and the powerful human narratives we project onto them. We watch as scientists peer through microscopes at the weave, debating threads per inch, while theologians and historians debate the nature of belief. The shroud becomes a mirror, reflecting our perpetual struggle to find absolute answers in a past that is always just out of reach. While the shroud reflects a clash of faith and science, a modern monument in rural Georgia became a lightning rod for a different kind of belief. Rising from a windswept hilltop in Elbert County stood the Georgia Guidestones, a stark granite structure often called America's Stonehenge. Erected in 1979, the monument consisted of 6 massive slabs over 19 feet tall, capped by a central stone. Its true mystery was not its age, but its origin and its message. The stones were inscribed with 10 guidelines for humanity, presented in 8 modern languages like English, Spanish, and Swahili, and 4 ancient scripts including Babylonian cuneiform and Classical Greek. The guidelines advocated for a future of radical balance, calling to maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature, to guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity, and to unite humanity with a living new language. The sponsor was a complete enigma, a man who used the pseudonym Robert C. Christian, claiming it represented a small group of loyal Americans. He paid for the monument in cash and vanished, leaving only these granite commandments to a new age of reason. For decades, the guidestones were a curiosity, attracting New Age pilgrims, conspiracy theorists, and puzzled locals. Some saw them as a hopeful blueprint for a sustainable future. Others viewed the words, particularly the call for a drastically reduced global population, as evidence of a sinister elitist agenda. This made the stones a permanent symbol of ideological conflict, a secret manifesto carved in plain sight whose author never stepped forward to explain. Then, on a summer morning in 2022, the secret escalated from philosophical to physical. An explosive device detonated at the base of the structure, severely damaging one of the large slabs. Security camera footage captured the sudden blast, a flash of violence against the silent granite. The damage was so extensive that county officials, citing public safety, made a decisive choice just a few weeks later. They completely demolished the entire monument, reducing the enigmatic stones to rubble. The once imposing pillars were now just broken fragments in a field. The destruction solved nothing, it only deepened the mystery. Who would do this and why? The theories are as polarized as the reactions to the stones themselves. Some believed it was an act of ideological warfare, a strike by those who saw the guidestones as a literal monument to globalism and depopulation. Others suggested it could have been a strategic move by the original, anonymous sponsors themselves, a way to erase a controversial project that had drawn too much dangerous attention. Local law enforcement investigated but made no arrests, leaving the case open and the motive shrouded in speculation. The before and after footage tells a stark story. One clip shows the slabs standing tall against the Georgia sky, their smooth faces etched with precise, futuristic lettering. The next shows the same site, now just a concrete pad littered with geometric chunks of gray stone, a modern ruin created in an instant. The Georgia Guidestone's secret is now twofold. First, the enduring mystery of R.C. Christian and his true vision. Was this a genuine, if radical, attempt to guide posterity or something more ominous? Second, the newer, more violent secret of who felt so threatened by these silent words that they chose to obliterate them. The stones are gone, but the questions they raised about planning for the future, the limits of public discourse, and the power of an anonymous idea now echo even louder from the empty hill where they once stood. Granite commandments were erased in an instant, but in the highlands of Laos, another field of stone endures, a mystery carved from the earth itself. The Plain of Jars is exactly what its name suggests, a series of over 90 sites where thousands of massive stone jars, some as tall as 10 feet and weighing several tons, lie scattered across the grassy plateaus. Carved from sandstone and granite during the Iron Age, between 500 BCE and 500 CE, these silent vessels have watched centuries pass. Their sheer number and scale are the first puzzle. Why would an ancient people invest such immense labor to quarry, carve, and transport these heavy containers, only to leave them in open fields far from any obvious settlement? The leading theory, pieced together from bone fragments and burial goods found in and around some jars, points to mortuary practices. Archaeologists believe the jars were used for excarnation, a process where bodies were placed inside to decompose, or for holding the cleaned bones of the deceased after a sky burial. It was a sacred landscape of the dead, where the jars acted as stone cocoons for the journey to the afterlife. An alternative, though less supported, idea suggests they were giant fermentation vats for storing rice wine for large communal festivals. Yet the true secret of the Plain of Jars is not locked in its ancient purpose, but in the deadly veil that has fallen over it in the modern era. During the Vietnam War, Laos became the most heavily bombed country per capita in history. For 9 years, American aircraft dropped over 2 million tons of ordnance across its landscape in a secret campaign to disrupt supply lines. Up to 30% of those bombs failed to detonate. Today, an estimated 80 million unexploded submunitions, known as cluster bomblets, litter the countryside, with the jar sites sitting squarely in some of the most contaminated zones. This legacy of war has created a heartbreaking paradox. The very fields that hold keys to understanding a 2,000-year-old civilization are now treacherous, limiting archaeological work to a few cleared paths. Researchers must be accompanied by bomb disposal experts, and vast areas remain untouched, their secrets guarded by an invisible, lethal harvest from the 20th century. Modern drone footage reveals this duality with haunting clarity. From above, the jars appear as a serene, almost magical garden of stone cylinders dotted with wildflowers. But the camera can also pan to the edges of the frame, where red stakes marked with skulls and crossbones warn of the deadly perimeter. The ongoing work of clearance teams is a slow, meticulous race against time, not just to make the land safe for farmers and children, but to finally allow scientists safe access to one of Southeast Asia's greatest archaeological enigmas. Each jar, therefore, holds two histories, an ancient one of ritual and remembrance, and a modern one of conflict and resilience, its full story still buried, waiting for the last deadly metal seed to be plucked from the earth. While the Plain of Jars holds its secrets in stone, a book in Sweden guards a legend written in ink and fear. The Codex Gigas, known as the Devil's Bible, is a monster of a manuscript. It is the largest surviving medieval book in the world, a tome so massive it is said to have required the skins of 160 donkeys to create its vellum pages. Its legend is as oversized as its binding. The story goes that in the 13th century, a Benedictine monk broke his vows and was sentenced to be walled up alive. In a desperate bargain, he promised to write a book containing all human knowledge in a single night. As midnight approached, realizing the task was impossible, he prayed not to God but to the fallen angel Lucifer, offering his soul in exchange for completion. The devil finished the book, and in thanks, the monk added a chilling full-page portrait of his benefactor. This is the tale that gave the book its name, but the real secret is not in a pact with darkness. It is in the staggering human effort the manuscript actually represents. Opening its covers reveals a complete Latin Vulgate Bible, but that is only the beginning. It contains historical works by Josephus, medical texts by Hippocrates and Galen, a chronicle of Bohemia, and even practical guides for exorcism and healing. This was meant to be a complete library in one volume, a summation of the world's knowledge as understood by a medieval monastery. The true marvel, however, lies in the handwriting. Paleographers, the scientists of script, have studied every letter. They found no variation in the ink, the nib width, or the stylistic quirks of the penmanship across the entire book. This astonishing consistency suggests it was the work of a single, dedicated scribe, not a team. To produce such a uniform text, he would have had to work in a very controlled environment, likely using his own carefully mixed batch of ink and cutting his own quills in an identical way for years on end. The psychological and physical feat is almost beyond comprehension. Imagine the routine: a single monk, perhaps in a cold scriptorium, bending over a desk for 6 to 8 hours a day, every day for an estimated 20 to 30 years. He would have inscribed over 310 dense parchment leaves, each one nearly 3 feet tall. The focus required to avoid a single major error, the sheer endurance of hand and eye, is a testament to a lifetime of devotion, not a single night of damnation. That famous devil illustration, often cited as proof of the dark legend, tells a different story when seen in its full context. The devil is depicted alone on its page, a monstrous, green-skinned figure crouching in a white void. But directly opposite it, on the facing page, is a magnificent rendering of the heavenly city, a vision of paradise. This was a common medieval motif, a stark visual reminder of the eternal choice between salvation and perdition. The monk who drew them was not glorifying the devil, he was presenting the two ultimate destinations of the Christian soul, a dramatic sermon in ink. Visuals of the book are essential to grasp its scale. A photograph of the open codex next to a person shows it is as tall as a small child. A close-up of the devil page reveals the intricate, almost sad detail in the creature's expression, while a pan across the endless columns of perfectly aligned Latin text drives home the monumental human achievement. The Codex Gigas is a secret hidden in the most obvious place within the lines of its own story. The legend of a demonic pact is thrilling, but the reality, a lifetime of unwavering discipline poured onto parchment, is a far more powerful kind of magic. That lifetime of devotion in a monastery scriptorium stands in stark contrast to the solitary, sun-baked labor of a man in 20th century Florida. The Coral Castle, a sprawling complex of massive coral rock sculptures in Homestead, is a monument to one man's heartbreak and his cryptic genius. Its creator, Edward Leedskalnin, was a 5-foot-tall, 100-pound Latvian immigrant, a man of slight build who worked alone almost always at night. Yet between 1923 and his death in 1951, he single-handedly quarried, carved, and positioned over 1,100 tons of oolitic limestone. The structures include a 9-ton gate that a child could push open with a finger, a 22-ton obelisk, and towering walls made of multi-ton blocks fitted together with impossible precision. How did he do it? Leedskalnin himself offered only a cryptic answer. He claimed to have discovered the secret that built the pyramids, the method used by the ancient Egyptians to move their own colossal stones. He spoke of understanding the laws of weight and leverage, of knowing how the builders harnessed the Earth's own magnetic forces. This grand claim, made by a reclusive man in overalls, fueled endless speculation about anti-gravity devices, reverse magnetism, and even sonic levitation. The real secret, however, is likely hidden not in lost physics, but in plain, simple mechanics and a profound understanding of leverage, all shrouded by the creator's intense secrecy. Neighbors and the rare curious visitor did report seeing things. They described Leedskalnin using homemade wooden tripods, a system of block and tackle pulleys, and metal chains. He was observed carefully placing rocks as fulcrums and using long metal bars to pivot blocks onto waiting trailers. In one surviving photograph, he is posed next to a tripod structure from which a chain block hangs. These are not tools of magic, but the fundamental principles of the lever, the inclined plane, and the pulley, the same simple machines available to the pyramid builders. The aura of mystery was his own creation. He would stop working immediately if anyone approached, covering his equipment with tarps. He often worked by lantern light, not just for the cooler night air, but to conceal his methods. This deliberate secrecy transformed his practical engineering into a legendary feat. The true ingenuity may have been in his patience and his unique adaptations. Some researchers propose he used a method called the perpetual motion holder. By precisely balancing a block on a central pivot point, he could walk it in a circular motion with minimal effort, inching it forward turn by turn. For the famous 9-ton revolving gate, he drilled a hole from top to bottom, inserted a metal shaft, and set it on an old truck bearing, achieving a perfect balance that negated its immense weight. Modern engineers and enthusiasts have attempted to recreate his work using only the tools he was known to have. These recreations are illuminating. Teams using period-accurate tripods, chain hoists, and a lot of manpower have demonstrated that moving a multi-ton block is brutally difficult, but it is possible. The process is achingly slow, a testament not to supernatural power but to sheer, stubborn will. Watching a reenactment, you see the sweat, the incremental adjustments, the creak of wood under strain. It strips away the myth to reveal the man, a heartbroken eccentric who, after being jilted by his young fiancée, dedicated his life to building a stone garden for her that she would never visit. The Coral Castle's secret is a dual one. On one level, it is the practical application of ancient principles, a lesson in how leverage can make the impossible merely difficult. On a deeper level, it is the power of a personal story, a man who built a mystery as much as a monument, knowing that sometimes the greatest allure lies not in revealing how something is done, but in letting the world wonder if magic might just be real after all. The Coral Castle was a monument to one man's lonely obsession, but on a small island off the coast of Nova Scotia, an obsession has been shared by generations. Oak Island's money pit is not a single secret but a layered trap of earth, water, and human hope. For over 200 years, treasure hunters have been drawn to a curious depression on the island, convinced it holds a fortune buried deep below. The story begins in 1795, when a teenager named Daniel Maginnis found a circular depression and a nearby tree with a pulley attached. He and his friends began to dig, discovering a series of ominous markers every 10 feet. A layer of flagstones, a platform of oak logs, then a layer of charcoal, then one of putty, and then one of coconut fiber, a material not native to Canada. At 90 feet, they reportedly hit a large stone slab inscribed with cryptic symbols. Beneath that, their probes struck what felt like a wooden chest. Exhausted, they left to gather more help. When they returned the next day, the pit was flooded with 60 feet of seawater, a booby trap that has defeated every attempt to empty it since. This was the first clue to a diabolical engineering feat, a series of flood tunnels cleverly dug from the pit out to the ocean, designed to protect whatever lies at the bottom with an endless rising tide. The theories about what those tunnels guard are as varied as the centuries of searchers. The most romantic points to Captain William Kidd or Blackbeard, who supposedly buried their vast pirate plunder in an impossibly complex vault. Another suggests it is the lost jewels of Marie Antoinette, smuggled out of revolutionary France by loyalists. A more scholarly theory proposes the pit holds the original manuscripts of William Shakespeare, hidden by Francis Bacon to preserve them, alongside proof that Bacon was the true author. Each theory adds a layer of legend to the muddy reality of the dig. But the modern secret of Oak Island is not buried in the pit, it is broadcast into millions of homes. The long-running reality television series, The Curse of Oak Island, has fundamentally changed the hunt. It provides a massive influx of funding, allowing for technology never before available, sonic drilling, satellite imaging, and armies of excavators. More importantly, it has turned a local mystery into a global spectacle, where each week viewers watch as brothers Rick and Marty Lagina and their team sift through centuries of mud and speculation. This modern effort has yielded tantalizing, if inconclusive, physical evidence. Core samples have brought up slivers of non-indigenous metals, including bits of copper, and lead that date to pre-1795. Wooden structures deep in the bedrock have been carbon-dated to the mid-1700s, proving human activity on the island long before the official discovery. A small, hand-wrought iron cross found in the mud has been speculated to be a Templar artifact. Yet the central vault remains elusive, the flood tunnels relentless. A simple diagram of the money pit reveals its maddening complexity. A deep, narrow shaft punctuated by those mysterious layers, branching out into 5 alleged flood tunnels that connect to the sea, a hydraulic lock no pump has ever beaten. Footage from the show captures this perpetual cycle of hope and frustration perfectly. The tense moments as a drill core is pulled up and washed clean, the brothers peering at the fragments, the collective holding of breath before another layer of earth is peeled back. Oak Island's secret endures not because it is hidden well, but because it is protected by a perfect, self-resetting trap of nature and human ingenuity. A riddle that consumes every fortune and dream sent down to solve it, promising that the next shovel, the next drill bit, might finally be the one that strikes true. The relentless engineering of Oak Island stands in sharp contrast to a mystery of pure artistry, a single object whose meaning was stamped into clay and then lost forever. On the sun-drenched island of Crete, within the ruins of the Minoan palace of Phaistos, archaeologists unearthed a small, fired clay disc just over 6 inches in diameter. Dated to around 1700 BCE, it is unassuming at first glance, but turn it over and you are met with a mesmerizing puzzle. Both faces are covered with a continuous spiral of tiny, intricate symbols stamped neatly into the wet clay before it was baked. There are 241 symbols in total, comprising 45 distinct pictorial signs, including human heads, birds, fish, shields, flowers, and abstract shapes. This is the Phaistos disc, and it is one of the most isolated and stubborn enigmas in archaeology. The reason it remains undeciphered is a perfect storm of historical silence. First, it is a complete orphan. No other object like it has ever been found in Minoan Crete or anywhere else in the world. The symbols were made with individual stamp seals, a form of movable type that predates Gutenberg's printing press by over 3,000 years, yet this technology appears nowhere else in the archaeological record of the era. Second, the script itself is unique. It does not match Linear A, the still undeciphered administrative script of the Minoans, nor does it bear a clear relationship to the later Linear B used by the Mycenaean Greeks. It stands alone, a linguistic island, without a bilingual text, a Rosetta Stone for this specific code, or even a larger corpus of examples to study patterns. Cryptographers are essentially working in the dark. The theories about its purpose are as varied as the symbols themselves. Some believe it is a religious hymn or a prayer, its spiral path representing a journey into the divine. Others argue it could be a board game, with the symbols representing spaces for pieces to move along. There is speculation it records a treaty, a story, or even an ancient piece of geometry or astronomy. The very act of stamping the symbols suggests an intention for replication, yet we have only this one copy. A detailed, rotating view of the disc is essential to feel its mystery. Each stamped impression is crisp and deliberate. You see a walking man, a helmeted head, a bee, a ship, a lily. They are arranged in groups separated by short vertical lines, as if forming words or phrases. Comparing these symbols side by side with those from Linear A and Linear B scripts highlights their profound difference. The Minoan scripts are more linear and abstract, while the Phaistos signs are vividly pictorial, almost like a primitive comic strip pressed into clay. This visual uniqueness is its own secret. The technological leap of using reusable stamps implies a desire for standardization and speed, a bureaucratic or ritual need to produce the same text repeatedly. Yet, the message was so specialized or so secret that it was never stamped again, or all other copies have vanished into dust. The disc sits in a museum in Heraklion, a silent, circular sermon from a civilization we can only partially hear. Its secret is not just in the meaning of its words, but in the story of why such an advanced method of writing was used only once, leaving behind a single, beautiful question mark in baked clay. Even the most studied monument on Earth still has empty spaces in its story. For centuries, the Great Pyramid of Giza was thought to be a simple, if monumental, structure, an entrance passage, a descending corridor, the Queen's Chamber, the Grand Gallery, and finally the King's Chamber with its granite sarcophagus. This was the accepted map, the complete tour, but the pyramid, it seems, was keeping a few rooms off the visitor's guide. Modern technology has peeled back the stone to reveal that the most famous tomb in the world is still hiding its full floor plan. The breakthrough came not with shovels but with particles from space. Scientists began using a technique called muon tomography. Cosmic rays from deep space constantly rain down on Earth, and as they collide with the atmosphere, they create subatomic particles called muons. These muons can pass through solid rock, but they are absorbed or deflected depending on the density of the material. By placing sensitive muon detectors inside the pyramid and around its base, researchers could essentially take an X-ray of the entire structure, mapping where muons passed through easily, indicating empty space and where they were blocked by thick stone. The results were staggering. The scans confirmed several large, previously unknown voids. The first, found in 2016, was a corridor-like space behind the chevron-shaped stones on the north face. But the truly monumental discovery was announced in 2017, a massive void at least 30 meters long sitting directly above the Grand Gallery. They called it simply the Big Void. This is not a small crack or a minor construction gap. Its size is comparable to the Grand Gallery itself, a cathedral of empty space hidden for 4,500 years. So what is it? The theories are as grand as the space itself. One strong possibility is that it is a structural relief chamber. The Grand Gallery has an astonishingly high, corbelled ceiling designed to distribute the immense weight of the pyramid's upper layers. The Big Void directly above it could be another similar architectural feature, a hidden ceiling to further relieve pressure and prevent the Grand Gallery from collapsing under hundreds of thousands of tons of limestone. It is a brilliant engineering redundancy, a backup system built into the heart of the monument. Another, more tantalizing idea is that it is a ritual space. Perhaps it is a second, never-used burial chamber prepared for a pharaoh whose plans changed. Or maybe it served a purely symbolic purpose, a sealed chamber representing a celestial concept, accessible only to the spirit of the king. Then there is the simplest explanation. It is merely a construction gap, an empty space left by the builders to reduce the total mass of stone needed for the upper sections, a practical decision that became a permanent secret. The truth is, we do not know, and that is the core of the mystery. Accessing the void is a problem of almost poetic difficulty. Drilling or tunneling towards it risks damaging the pyramid's structural integrity or destroying whatever might be inside. Any intrusion could change the microclimate, causing priceless artifacts, if they exist, to crumble to dust upon contact with modern air. So for now, the void exists as a ghost in the data, a shadow on a muon scan. A three-dimensional cutaway model makes this mystery tangible. Picture the familiar silhouette of the pyramid, then see it become transparent, revealing the known passages in red. Now, superimposed in blue, you see the new shapes, the corridor behind the north face, and high in the core, that huge, rectangular blank spot hovering above the Grand Gallery like a silent, weightless cloud. It is a humbling visual. It tells us that for all our centuries of exploration, our cameras and guidebooks, a part of the Great Pyramid's original blueprint has remained untouched, a secret room waiting at the top of the world's oldest staircase. High above the hidden chamber of the Great Pyramid, another ancient landscape is etched with lines that lead not to a void, but to a vanishing point. On the Mediterranean islands of Malta and Gozo, the limestone bedrock is scarred by a bewildering network known as the cart ruts. These are not faint scratches, but deep, parallel channels gouged into the stone, sometimes a foot deep and with a consistent axle width apart. They crisscross the islands in a chaotic web, climbing hills, dipping into valleys, and intersecting in complex junctions that look like prehistoric railroad switches. Their origin is a puzzle written in stone, and the most compelling clue is also the most perplexing. Many of these ruts run in unwavering, parallel lines directly off of sea cliffs, plunging into the deep blue water below as if the tracks once continued onto a land that is no longer there. The theories to explain them are as numerous as the ruts themselves. The most practical suggests they were created by sledges or carts transporting the massive stone blocks used to build Malta's famed megalithic temples. Repeated journeys along the same path, with heavy loads grinding against the soft limestone, could have gradually worn these deep grooves. Another idea proposes they were part of an agricultural system, perhaps channels for irrigation or even trenches for cultivating grapevines, with the parallel lines allowing for orderly planting and drainage. Yet, each explanation meets a stubborn counterpoint. If they were cart tracks, why are there so many weaving in such a dense, overlapping tangle? Would a society not develop a more organized road system? And if for agriculture, why would they invest such immense labor to carve trenches in solid rock when soil was available? This leads to the rut's true secret, which is not their purpose, but the profound geological story they tell about a lost world. The fact that these channels run straight off modern cliffs is the key. It strongly suggests that when the ruts were carved thousands of years ago, the coastline was dramatically different. The land likely extended much farther out to sea. What is now a cliff edge was perhaps a gentle slope leading down to a harbor or a fertile plain. Over millennia, as sea levels rose at the end of the last ice age, or as the Maltese Islands themselves slowly subsided, the water crept in, swallowing the endpoints of these mysterious pathways. The ruts that vanish into the Mediterranean are not a design flaw. They are a fossilized shoreline, a permanent record of a drowned landscape. Aerial footage captures this ghostly geography perfectly. From above, the networks look like giant circuit boards etched into the golden stone, a chaotic but purposeful design. Then the camera can follow a single pair of ruts, tracing their unwavering path across a plateau, right to the very edge of a cliff where they disappear into thin air above the crashing waves. Ground-level views are equally powerful. Walking between the deep grooves, you can run your hands along the smooth, rounded walls worn by countless passages. You can stand at a cliff's edge where the ruts end abruptly and look down at the sea, imagining the missing piece of the puzzle now lying silent on the seabed. The cart ruts of Malta are a monument to absence. They do not hide what they were for, they openly display the evidence. The real mystery they guard is the shape of the world their creators knew, a world that sank beneath the waves, leaving only these stark parallel lines as a map to a vanished coast. Beneath the sunken coastlines of Malta lies a different kind of lost world, one not claimed by the sea, but deliberately walled away by a Tsar. The legend of the lost library of Ivan the Terrible is Russia's most persistent historical ghost story. It begins not with Ivan, but with a marriage. In 1472, Ivan III, Grand Prince of Moscow, married Sophia Paleologina, the niece of the last Byzantine emperor. Her dowry was not just gold, but knowledge. She was said to have brought with her a priceless inheritance, the legendary library of the Byzantine emperors, a collection that had preserved the wisdom of ancient Greece and Rome through the Middle Ages. This treasure trove of classical texts, including works by Aristotle, Plato, and histories lost everywhere else, was rumored to have filled hundreds of chests. For generations, the library was a whispered secret among scholars and courtiers in Moscow. Then came Ivan IV, known to history as Ivan the Terrible. A man of towering intellect and profound paranoia, he was both a scholar and a tyrant. As his reign grew darker, marked by the violent purges of his secret police, the Oprichnina, the library vanished from all records. The story goes that Ivan, fearing its knowledge would fall into the wrong hands or perhaps wishing to hoard it for himself, ordered the entire collection hidden deep within a labyrinth of secret tunnels and chambers beneath the Moscow Kremlin. He sealed the entrance, and the library passed from sight into myth. For centuries since, it has been the holy grail of Russian history. Tsars and archaeologists, revolutionaries and fortune hunters have all searched. Peter the Great ordered excavations. Napoleon's soldiers, retreating from Moscow in 1812, supposedly heard the legend and dug frantically. In the 1930s, Stalin, intrigued by the idea of a hidden power source of knowledge, authorized a secret search during renovations of the Kremlin, even using ground-penetrating technology for its time. The searches have always yielded the same result, tantalizing clues that lead to dead ends. Explorers have found hidden rooms, sealed cellars, and sections of underground passages that match medieval descriptions. But no chests, no scrolls, no books. The tunnels themselves are a real architectural secret. The Kremlin sits on a foundation of ancient limestone, riddled with natural caves and springs that were expanded over centuries into a subterranean network for storage, escape, and water supply. Maps of these tunnels, pieced together from partial surveys, show a bewildering, multi-layered maze. A library could be hidden in any one of 100 sealed chambers, or it could have been destroyed by flooding, fire, or simple decay centuries ago. The power of this secret lies not in its physical reality, but in its symbolic weight. For Russia, the lost library represents a broken bridge to the classical past, a direct lineage to the grandeur of Rome and Constantinople that was severed. It symbolizes the nation's own complex identity, caught between East and West, between isolation and enlightenment. Historical paintings of Ivan the Terrible capture this duality perfectly. He is often depicted in a moment of tortured contemplation, surrounded by books and icons, a man who could appreciate profound scholarship while committing terrible violence. The library becomes an extension of his own enigmatic soul, a treasure of light locked away in darkness. The secret endures because it answers a deep human longing for a single, physical vault that holds the answers to antiquity's greatest questions. It is a ghost that haunts the very heart of Russian power, a collection of whispers and shadows that promises, just behind the next stone wall, a room where the thoughts of Aristotle still wait patiently in the silent dark. That ghost library of lost knowledge exists only in whispers, but on a windswept English hillside, a secret is written so large it can only be seen from the sky. The Uffington White Horse is a breathtaking spectacle, a stylized figure over 360 feet long, carved into the chalk bedrock of the Berkshire Downs. For centuries, historians linked it to the Anglo-Saxon victory at the Battle of Ashdown in 871, assuming it was a proud monument to King Alfred's cavalry. The horse seemed a perfect fit for that era of warrior kings, but the land itself held a much older truth, one that modern science has finally pulled from the soil. Researchers used a technique called optically stimulated luminescence dating, which measures when grains of quartz in the soil were last exposed to sunlight. By testing the deepest layers of chalk rubble at the base of the figure, they made a staggering discovery. The white horse was not carved in the 9th century. It was created nearly 3,000 years ago in the Late Bronze Age or Early Iron Age, around 1400 BCE. This single finding rewrites the entire narrative. The figure predates the Anglo-Saxons by over a millennium. It was already ancient when the Romans marched through Britain, and it watched from its hill as the legends of King Arthur were born. So what was its purpose for a people living in the Age of Bronze? The most compelling theories connected to the very fabric of the cosmos. The horse's elegant, flowing form, composed of a single, continuous line, resembles horses found on ancient Celtic coins. It may have been a territorial marker for a powerful tribe, a statement of ownership visible for miles, but its spiritual significance likely ran deeper. In many Indo-European cultures, the horse was a potent solar symbol pulling the sun's chariot across the sky. The Uffington horse faces left as if in motion, galloping across the ridge. Its position aligns with the rising sun on certain dates, suggesting it could have been part of a vast, sacred calendar etched into the landscape, much like the Nazca lines. Another powerful idea links it to the Celtic goddess Epona, a divine protector of horses, fertility, and sovereignty. The figure might have been a giant offering to her, a prayer for the health of the tribe's herds and the fertility of their land, its white chalk gleaming as a beacon to the divine. The true secret, however, is not just its age but its miraculous survival. A chalk carving on an open hillside should have vanished beneath grass and soil within a few generations. The Uffington White Horse has endured for 3,000 years because of a sacred, unbroken tradition. For millennia, local communities have gathered in a ceremony known as scouring. Every 7 years or so, people would clear away encroaching vegetation and replenish the trenches with fresh, bright chalk. This was not mere maintenance, it was a ritual act of renewal, a communal pledge to keep the symbol alive. Each scouring was a reaffirmation of a covenant with the past, ensuring the horse would gallop into the future. Aerial footage reveals the full majesty of this commitment. From above, the horse is a stark, abstract masterpiece against the green hills, its elongated body and disjointed limbs creating a sense of swift, eternal motion. A timeline graphic then drives the point home, showing the horse's creation in the Bronze Age, and then marking the successive waves of history that passed beneath it, the Romans, the Anglo-Saxons, the Normans, all the way to the present day, with the periodic pulse of the scouring ceremony keeping it visible through every era. This ancient white horse is a secret not of burial but of persistence. It is a message from the Bronze Age, not hidden in a tomb, but openly displayed on a hillside, its meaning guarded not by silence, but by the caring hands of countless generations who decided, for reasons they may have forgotten, that this galloping chalk spirit was worth saving forever. A chalk horse galloping across millennia shows how a community can preserve a mystery, but another vanished community left behind only a single, desperate word. The story of the lost colony of Roanoke is America's oldest cold case. In 1587, Governor John White sailed back to England from the fledgling settlement on Roanoke Island to secure more supplies. War with Spain delayed his return for 3 long years. When he finally made it back in 1590, the entire population of 115 men, women, and children had disappeared. The settlement was dismantled with no signs of struggle or battle. The only clue was a single word carved into a fort's post, Croatoan, and the letters Cerebro carved into a nearby tree. For centuries, the dominant theory has been one of assimilation. The colonists, facing starvation and strained relations with some local tribes, may have taken shelter with the Croatan people, a friendly group who lived on what is now Hatteras Island. The carved word was not a distress signal, but a deliberate message telling White exactly where they had gone. Storms prevented White from sailing to Croatoan to investigate, and he returned to England, leaving the fate of the colony to legend. This explanation is logical and supported by later reports from Jamestown settlers decades later, who heard stories from natives of white people living inland. But a secret, hidden for over 400 years in plain sight on a map, suggests a more complex plan. In 2012, researchers at the British Museum were examining John White's original watercolor map of the region using modern imaging techniques. They noticed something strange. On the map, over a patch depicting land across the Albemarle Sound from Roanoke, there were 2 small, faint patches. These were not stains or damage. Under infrared and ultraviolet light, they resolved into the distinct shape of a Renaissance-era symbol, a 4-pointed star in red and blue ink marking the location of a planned fort. This was a crucial find. The symbol was carefully hidden beneath a patch of paper that had been glued over the spot, perhaps to keep the information secret from Spanish spies. This secret fort symbol points to a contingency plan the colonists had from the beginning. If Roanoke became untenable, they were to move 50 miles inland to a pre-arranged location, near the confluence of 2 rivers, a more defensible and potentially more fertile area. This supports the idea of a deliberate, organized relocation, not a panicked flight. The carving of Croatoan, then, might not have been their final destination, but a directional marker, telling White they had gone to seek help from their Croatan allies before moving on to the fort site. Physical evidence adds weight to this theory. On Hatteras Island, archaeologists have unearthed a mix of 16th-century English and Native American artifacts at a Croatan site, including a unique gold signet ring. This ring bears the crest of a Master Kendall, a man known to have been part of an earlier expedition to the area. It is not definitive proof, but it is a tangible, personal object that links a specific colonist to the very people they were suspected of joining. A detailed look at the map under modern light is revealing. You can see the ghostly outline of the star symbol bleeding through the old paper patch, a hidden piece of cartographic intent. Then a close-up of the signet ring shows its intricate heraldic carving, worn smooth by time but still legible, a tiny, silent emissary from a life interrupted. The lost colony's secret is no longer just a word on a tree. It is a hidden mark on a map and a ring in the sand, suggesting a story not of simple disappearance, but of a calculated survival plan that may have succeeded, weaving those 115 souls permanently into the fabric of a new world, leaving only cryptic clues for us to trace their journey from history into legend. The cryptic carvings of Roanoke were meant for a specific viewer, but in the grand galleries of Renaissance art, some paintings hold messages intended for only one perspective. Among the treasures of the National Gallery in London, Hans Holbein the Younger's masterpiece, The Ambassadors, presents a stunning display of worldly knowledge and wealth. Two French diplomats stand proudly amidst a collection of scientific instruments, globes, and luxurious textiles, symbols of human achievement during the Renaissance. Yet, sprawled diagonally across the bottom of the canvas is a strange, elongated, grayish smear. To the casual observer standing directly in front of the painting, it is an abstract, confusing blur that disrupts the otherwise photorealistic scene. The secret reveals itself only when you abandon the traditional viewpoint. If you move to the far right side of the painting and look back across its surface, the distorted shape snaps into shocking focus. It is a perfectly rendered human skull, a classic memento mori. This technique is called anamorphosis, a deliberate distortion that requires the viewer to occupy a specific, often extreme, vantage point to see the hidden image correctly. Holbein was not alone in this practice. Other artists embedded hidden anamorphic faces in architectural details or within landscape scenes, creating visual puzzles for the educated elite. The skull in The Ambassadors is far more than a party trick of perspective. It is a profound philosophical bomb placed at the feet of power. The two ambassadors represent the pinnacle of secular success, masters of diplomacy, science, and commerce. The hidden skull, visible only from the side, literally offers a different angle on their accomplishments. It whispers that all this worldly glory, every instrument and every fine garment, is fleeting in the face of mortality. Death is the ultimate perspective shift, the great leveler that renders status and knowledge meaningless. To see it, you must physically change your position, enacting the very act of stepping outside your normal view of life to contemplate its end. The technical skill required is breathtaking. Holbein had to paint the skull twice, in a sense, first, as it would appear when stretched across the canvas from that extreme side angle, and second, as that distorted image would look when viewed head-on. This required a masterful understanding of geometry and optics that rivaled the scientific instruments depicted in the painting itself. A short video clip makes this transformation magical. The camera starts facing the painting squarely, the gray smear an obvious but indecipherable flaw. Then it slowly tracks to the right, keeping focus on the distorted shape. As the angle sharpens, the blur begins to coalesce, the eye sockets hollow out, the nasal cavity forms, and in a final, satisfying moment, the entire skull emerges, perfectly proportioned and terrifyingly clear, floating like a ghost over the rich carpet. This is a secret painted for the discerning viewer, for the person willing to move, to question, to look from the edges. It reminds us that the Renaissance was not just a rebirth of art and science, but also a period obsessed with the tension between human potential and human fragility. In a room full of symbols celebrating what man can know and own, Holbein hid the one truth he cannot escape, ensuring that the most important message in the room could only be seen by those who knew where and how to look. Hidden images in Renaissance art required a specific perspective to unlock, but deep in the jungles of Central America, a different kind of perfection sat waiting for a modern age to clear the trees and see it. Scattered across the Diquis Delta of Costa Rica are hundreds of stone spheres known locally as Los Bolas. ranging in size from a few inches to over 8 feet in diameter and weighing up to 16 tons. Their most arresting feature is their geometry. Many are nearly perfect spheres, crafted with a precision that seems to defy the stone tools of the people who made them, the Dickwes culture between 300 CE and 1500 CE. The material is granodiorite, a hard, igneous rock. To shape it, artisans would have first identified a suitable boulder, then used heat from fires to weaken the surface before painstakingly pecking and grinding it into form with other, harder stones. The final smoothing, achieving that breathtaking roundness, likely involved sand and water in a process of relentless abrasion that could have taken generations for a single large sphere. This was not a quick task, but a monumental investment of communal time and skill. So what compelled them to do it? Unlike the Nazca lines, these spheres were not meant to be seen from above. They were placed on the ground, often in groups or alignments. The leading theory is that they functioned as powerful status symbols and territorial markers. Placing a cluster of these perfect forms at the entrance to a village or near a chief's dwelling was a statement of authority, control, and connection to the spiritual world. Their roundness might have symbolized celestial bodies like the sun or moon, or concepts of wholeness and permanence. Some arrangements appear to line up with astronomical phenomena, suggesting they also helped mark seasons or important dates, anchoring the community to the cycles of the cosmos. Their true secret, however, is not their ancient purpose, but their modern rediscovery and the profound loss that came with it. For centuries, the spheres sat silently in the jungle, known only to local farmers. Then, in the 1930s, the United Fruit Company began clearing vast tracts of rainforest to plant bananas. As bulldozers tore through the undergrowth, they began to uncover these strange, round stones. Workers and managers, fascinated by them, started moving them. The spheres were rolled onto company properties to adorn gardens and lawns. They were taken to government buildings and used as decorative monuments in city plazas. Some were even dynamited by treasure hunters who believed incorrectly they contained gold. In the process of being saved and displayed, the spheres were ripped from their original settings. Their precise arrangements, their relationships to burial sites or structures, and the subtle alignments that held their meaning were destroyed forever. An archaeologist today can study a sphere in a museum courtyard, but they cannot know if it was the central piece of a ceremonial plaza, the marker of a sacred spring, or one point in a star map on the forest floor. That context is the true treasure that was lost. Visualizing this duality is key. One image shows a group of spheres half buried in the rich, dark soil of the jungle, ferns growing around them, their surfaces patinated with lichen. They look like the eggs of some mythical stone creature, part of the landscape. The next image shows those same spheres, now clean and isolated, sitting on a manicured lawn outside a corporate office, looking like modern sculpture. The contrast is heartbreaking. The stone spheres of Costa Rica are a warning etched in granite. They tell us that a secret can survive for 1,500 years hidden by nature, only to be scattered and misunderstood in a single generation by the very curiosity that uncovers it. They stand as beautiful, silent sentinels to a world we saw too late, their perfect shapes holding an imperfect and fragmented story. The stone spheres of Costa Rica were scattered by modern hands, but another treasure is said to be hidden deliberately, waiting for a map to lead the way. In the closing chaos of the Second World War, as the Third Reich collapsed, a legend was born in the Owl Mountains of southwestern Poland. Local stories and whispered intelligence reports spoke of a heavily armored German train, loaded with gold, jewels, priceless art, and possibly even the lost Amber Room of Russia, which was sealed inside a hidden tunnel complex and then vanished. The narrative was compelling, a perfect final act of Nazi secrecy and plunder. According to the tale, in the spring of 1945, with the Soviet Red Army advancing, a train departed from the city of Breslau, now Wrocław, and entered a labyrinth of tunnels built under Project Reese, a massive, unfinished underground headquarters. It never emerged. The entrance was dynamited shut, and the knowledge of its location died with the SS officers who ordered it buried. For decades, this was the stuff of local folklore and treasure hunter dreams. Then, in August of 2015, the story exploded into global headlines. Two men, a Pole and a German, claimed they had found it. Using ground-penetrating radar, they said they had detected a buried train over 100 meters long on a railway spur near the city of Wolbazich. They showed blurry radar images that seemed to show the rectangular shapes of train cars. They even secured a 10% finder's fee from the local government in a formal agreement. The world watched captivated. The Polish military cordoned off the area, and teams of bomb disposal experts swept the site, expecting to find both explosives and history. The secret, however, was not in the ground but in the nature of the hope that drove the search. Despite exhaustive scans and excavations, no train was ever found. The radar anomalies were likely natural geological formations or the remnants of old, collapsed mining works. The two treasure hunters eventually withdrew their claim, and the official investigation concluded there was no evidence to support the existence of the train at that location. So why does the legend persist with such power? It is a fusion of three potent ingredients. First, there is the bedrock of truth. The Nazis did systematically loot Europe on an unimaginable scale, and they did hide vast quantities of treasure in the final days of the war. Caches of gold, currency, and art have been discovered in salt mines, lakes, and forests across Germany and Austria. The Owl Mountains were the site of the real Project Reese, a network of concrete-lined tunnels whose true purpose remains partially unclear. This real history provides a plausible stage for the legend. Second, there is the specific folklore that grew in the vacuum of the post-war years. Eyewitness accounts from elderly residents, often recounted decades later, spoke of strange train movements, nighttime explosions, and mysterious soldiers. These memories, blurred by time and trauma, wove a specific narrative around the known fact that something was hidden. Third, and perhaps most powerful, is the enduring human desire for a singular, definitive treasure trove, a pot of gold at the end of a very dark rainbow. The idea of one train holding the condensed wealth of a regime satisfies a narrative craving for closure and discovery. Modern searches continue, armed with ever more sophisticated technology like magnetometers and advanced radar, scanning the dense, wooded slopes. Historical photographs of the railway lines from the 1940s show the intricate web of tracks that serviced the Reese project, any one of which could have been a candidate for a final, secret siding. Yet, these images also highlight the problem. They show a landscape so heavily altered by industry and war that distinguishing a natural ridge from a filled-in tunnel entrance becomes a task of interpretation, not detection. The Nazi gold train remains a ghost in the machine, a secret carved from equal parts historical crime, local memory, and collective longing. It teaches us that sometimes the most compelling mysteries are not those that are conclusively solved, but those that live in the fertile space between what was lost, what is rumored, and what we desperately wish to find. These strange bathing scenes form one of the most enigmatic sections of the entire Voynich manuscript. Across several pages, we see groups of nude women, often crowned or adorned, standing or lounging inside elaborate, interconnected pools and tubs. Green pipe-like channels link these basins, and the water is sometimes depicted as a vibrant blue or green. This is often called the balneological or bath section. At first glance, it might resemble a whimsical sketch of a medieval spa, but the meticulous detail suggests something far more significant, a diagram of a lost medical or philosophical system. One compelling theory views these pages as a symbolic map of human reproduction. The interconnected pools could represent the female reproductive system, with the channels illustrating pathways for conception and gestation. The crowned women might symbolize different stages of fertility or different celestial influences on the process, blending anatomy with astrology in a way that was typical of medieval thought. Another interpretation sees this as a guide to hydrotherapy, a series of herbal healing baths. Each pool could be infused with specific plants from the earlier botanical section, with the pipes directing waters of different medicinal properties to treat various ailments. The postures of the women might indicate the treatment for a specific condition, a visual recipe for a therapeutic immersion. Perhaps the most profound idea is that this is a diagram of the body's humors, the four vital fluids: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile, that ancient and medieval medicine believed governed health and temperament. The interconnected pools would then chart the flow and balance of these humors, a hydraulic model of the human condition. The secret here is not a single answer, but the breathtaking glimpse these pages offer into a complete, self-contained worldview. It is a system where the human body, therapeutic plants, celestial forces, and flowing water are all part of one interconnected whole, a universe in miniature. Modern digital enhancements allow us to peer closer. High-resolution scans reveal the careful structure of each pool complex, the precise lines of the channels, and the repeated, ritualistic postures of the figures. Comparing these networks to later, known anatomical drawings from the Renaissance shows a stark contrast. Where Leonardo da Vinci sought to depict physical reality through dissection, the Voynich artist seems to be mapping an invisible, energetic, or spiritual reality. This section may be the manuscript's conceptual heart, tying the impossible botany to a vision of human life sustained by a secret, hydraulic harmony with nature. It is a lost philosophy painted in water and flesh, a final, beautiful reminder that some of history's greatest secrets are not facts waiting to be uncovered, but entire ways of seeing the world that have evaporated, leaving only these cryptic, haunting images as proof they ever existed at all. The manuscript's final pages turn from water to the heavens, presenting a series of intricate circular diagrams. These are not simple decorations. They are complex wheels segmented like a pie, each slice filled with tiny stars, zodiac symbols, and more of that baffling, looping script. Some wheels have a central sun or moon, while others show the signs of the zodiac arranged in concentric rings. This is the astronomical section, and it may hold the key to the entire manuscript's purpose if only we could read the labels. Researchers have spent decades trying to match these wheels to the night sky. Could they be star charts plotting the positions of planets for specific dates? Some have attempted to align the symbols with known astronomical events, like the Great Conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn in 1345, but no match has been definitive. The problem is the same as with the plants. We cannot be sure what the symbols are meant to represent. A small star in the diagram might be the planet Venus, or it might be a code for a specific herb. This leads to a fascinating possibility. Perhaps these are not pure astronomy charts, but a form of astrological botany. In the medieval world, the stars were not just points of light, they were direct influences on the earth. The position of the moon determined the best time to plant, harvest, or bleed a patient. Each zodiac sign was believed to govern specific parts of the body and specific plants. A diagram showing Taurus might not just be about the constellation, but about the herbs used to treat the throat which Taurus rules. The manuscript could be a physician's or an herbalist's master reference, linking the timing of celestial events to the gathering and use of the fantastical plants depicted earlier. It would be a complete system where healing was a dance between the earth and the sky. On the other hand, the wheels could represent a purely philosophical cosmology, a model of how the Creator believed the universe worked, with layers of celestial spheres influencing the sublunar world of plants and bodies below. They might be teaching tools meant to illustrate the flow of cosmic energy into the terrestrial realm. The final, humbling secret of the Voynich manuscript is this holistic mystery. It refuses to be categorized. It is not just a book of plants or of baths or of stars. It is all three seamlessly woven together into a single, indecipherable tapestry. The same hand that drew an impossible root system also charted the zodiac and sketched women in green-tinted pools. This unity suggests a worldview where these elements were not separate sciences, but interconnected threads of a single profound truth. The manuscript presents itself as a unified theory of nature, a lost encyclopedia of a philosophy we no longer understand. When you look at one of these star wheels, you are not just looking at a failed puzzle, you are looking at the ghost of an entire intellectual universe, a complete way of seeing life, health, and the cosmos that has vanished without a translator. It sits in its library case, a silent, beautiful monument to the most intimate kind of historical secret, not a hidden fact, but a lost language for describing the world itself. From botanical codes and sunken coastlines to ghost trains and silent libraries, these 30 secrets are more than isolated curiosities. They form a single, sprawling testament to a profound truth. History is not a closed book sitting on a shelf. It is a living, breathing puzzle, and some of its most crucial pieces are not lost in deep jungles or buried in forgotten tombs. They are hidden in plain sight, waiting for a shift in perspective, a new technology, or simply a curious mind to look at the familiar and ask the right question. Each mystery we have explored, from the Sphinx's shadowy chamber to the whispers in the Bayeux Tapestry's borders, shares common threads. They speak of astonishing human ingenuity, the kind that could build a coral castle with simple levers or chart the stars with bronze gears. They warn of the heartbreaking fragility of knowledge, how a language can be erased in a generation or a library's location die with a paranoid czar. And above all, they reveal our own enduring desire, the drive to solve, to connect, and to understand our place in the long human story. This journey does not end here. It is an invitation. The same principles that revealed a void in the Great Pyramid or a star on a 400-year-old map apply to the world outside your window. Your own town, your local landscape holds layers of history. That odd-shaped building on the corner, the strange name of a street, the unusual rock formation in a nearby park, each could be a clue to a story no one has fully told. History is not just something that happened elsewhere. It is the accumulated layers of every place, and much of it remains quietly visible to those who choose to look closer. So we turn the question to you. Which of these 30 secrets resonated most deeply? Was it the tragic silence of the Rongo-Rongo script, the stubborn mystery of the money pit, or the hidden skull in a Renaissance masterpiece? And beyond this list, what hidden histories lie in your own part of the world? Share your thoughts and your local mysteries in the comments below. If you have enjoyed this exploration into the puzzles of our past, consider subscribing. Together, we can keep looking closer, peeling back the layers, and discovering the incredible secrets history has left out in the open, waiting for us to see them.